I'm Sigourney Cantelo and welcome to Beautiful Inside. I've been a beauty and health journalist reporting on how to be beautiful on the outside for 22 years. Now I want to explore inner beauty as well. I've been influenced to make this shift by my own mental health journey, and it's prompted me to look for people like me who are willing to share their story. How do they care for their inner self while also attending to the outer? What have they learned about finding strength and courage and happiness in today's ever more challenging world? And what are the strategies that they've found to maintain that radiance, that joie de vivre, the inner spark that comes about when our minds and bodies are in balance? Come with me as we go inside the homes, routines, and inner lives of fascinating people. We'll discuss the science and psychology of beauty and self-care and give you the tools to look and feel the very best you ever have, inside and out. Beautiful Inside acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land that this podcast is recorded on, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. This episode is proudly brought to you by Internals, the new premium supplement brand powered by Synergy Skin. When it came to finding a sponsor for my first season, Synergy Skin was the first brand I actually approached. Not only do I love using their skincare, but I adore the brand founder, Terry Vincent-Jones. We've been friends for years and I've co-hosted many of their events, including their latest debut, Internals. Terry, who is a cosmetic chemist and an author, she wrote the incredible book Skinformation, is just a wealth of knowledge, and she's my oracle when it comes to all things longevity and inner health. In fact, every time I see her, I whip out my notebook and take notes on everything she's taking, from supplements, her diet, and her exercise. She looks absolutely incredible, but she also is a shining example of how inner beauty radiates from someone. She has this beautiful warmth, energy, vitality that just comes through in everything she creates. Both the skincare and the supplements are made in Australia, and they only contain potent ingredients that are proven to work. They're the perfect blend of science and nature. It's no surprise then that Terry's latest creation, Internals, is equally impressive from an efficacy and ingredient standpoint. But what I love most about them is that they're designed to boost your beauty and health from the inside out, which is exactly what we're all about here at Beautiful Inside. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of my chat with Georgie about everything. If you missed the first episode, feel free to go back and have a listen. To give you a little recap, my dear friend Georgie, we've been besties since we worked together at Vogue over 16 years ago. She suggested she interview me for a couple of episodes of the podcast where I could explain the kind of major circumstances that led to me wanting to pivot the podcast, pivot the brand into something a little bit deeper and more meaningful. And I'm really excited with where Beautiful Inside is heading. I really feel like I've found my purpose, and that is to really destigmatize chats around mental health and to really open up discussions and share and connect with other people. So Georgie interviewed me for that episode, and it was a big one. We covered everything from childhood to careers, to working together in our early days at Vogue, leaving to start our websites, and then some of the gnarly stuff that happened afterwards from, a health and mental health perspective, culminating in a stay at a treatment center, which I never thought I would say. Isn't it funny how life throws these curveballs? But as you'll see, it was actually a pretty incredible experience, and not without some challenges. So I hope you enjoy this episode.
So I know that you grappled with whether to go or not, and then in the end you decided to go, and I'm so glad that you did. So what did influence that decision to go, and did you feel like you were at rock bottom?
Well, yeah, I did grapple for weeks, and I talked to a couple of other psychologists that I knew, and I asked their opinion. Actually, a couple of them had also worked at SPP and said it's an amazing place. It changes lives. And I talked to my friend that had been there, and he said, yep, like it's incredible. So I already had this glowing recommendation. And then they said to me, look, if you really don't, I said, can I just come and do the outpatient, the courses? Because they do incredible trauma courses, and a lot of other courses where you can just come and be a day patient and come and go. And I was like, that sounds like me. I don't need to go go into hospital. I'm not that bad. So I called them and I was like, okay, I've got a plan. Can I just come in and do the day courses? And they were like, yeah, we don't really do that, but look, why don't you do an assessment with our psychiatrist, and maybe, you know, he might give you the green light kind of thing. And I was like, great, sweet, I'm good. And so I had a 1 hour call with Dr. Party, psychiatrist.
Dr.
Party.
Party.
Okay,
Yeah, I was
Dr.
say.
Party.
He sounds fun.
He is actually really great. He's amazing. He's my psychiatrist now. Dr. Party. Yeah, we have a great time. So yeah, I had the call with him, and like the other psychologist, he's like, yep, you have significant childhood trauma. And I was like, what is this? Like, me and trauma? I don't have trauma, but fine. He said, Sigourney, if there is some way that you can make this happen, it will change your life. And I was like, oh my God, there's an expert here that's telling me it will change my life. Like, I can't ignore that. He seems to think that I'm the right candidate. He seems to think it's going to make a big difference. So after I spoke to Dr. Party, and, you know, I told Damien and my mom, and they were really quite encouraging. They were like, look, just go and do it. You know, mum's like, I'll help with the kids. Damien's parents helped, my dad and his wife helped. So I had
Did you tell friends? Because there is a big stigma around, especially saying I've had a breakdown and I'm going to hospital. I mean, there's a huge stigma.
Yeah, no, I did. I told you.
Yeah, you told me. Yeah.
I told a couple of close friends, but by and large, if someone pushed me, I'd say I'd say I was going to a health retreat. Like, we're talking like outer circle friends. And in my mind, I was like, well, it's a mental health retreat, because I almost felt like I'd been given a bit of a golden ticket in a way. Like, I felt like I'm so lucky to have 3 weeks to focus on my healing, to have a fleet of therapists at my disposal, other people going through similar stuff, even if it's a different flavor of trauma or a different flavor of, you know, coping mechanisms or whatever. How lucky that I get to, you know, devastated that I had to leave the kids, like terrified. Also, leaving work was just like, that was just like,
because you had no phone for 3 weeks.
No phone, no laptop. No, not even a novel. You're not allowed to take books in, because you can take self-help books, but you can't have fiction. Anything that one would use to escape their feelings. So what I learned is that I wasn't good at sitting in my feelings. And I've created methods of like perpetual busyness and being like very, very busy with work. That's one of my coping mechanisms. You know,
I think so many people are like that. We don't
totally.
We'll sit down on our bed and we'll just pick up our phone, or we'll watch TV, or we'll watch TV while we're on our phone and double screen.
Yes.
But actually sitting with yourself and saying, oh, how are you feeling today? You're a bit off. Like, we don't do it. We don't prioritize it.
Yeah, and we're scared of the feelings. So anything that you would use, like even excessive exercise, is banned. So yes, and there's a whole list when you're packing of things that you can't bring, even like, you know, hair dryers, anything with a cord, because of, you know, people with self-harm tendencies, you can't have cords. Anything that, you know, could be packaged in glass and could be broken, you know, tweezers, anything sharp, obviously you can't bring in. So, you know, there was a long list. And then the sex addicts, that was another thing. I shouldn't laugh because it's a serious problem. But you couldn't wear shoestring straps. You couldn't wear anything tight or revealing. Like, it's, you know, there was a strict dress code. And when we went swimming of the afternoon, we'd do a wade, and you had to wear a rashie and shorts. So anything that would trigger people was banned. And no sugar, no caffeine. So that was a little challenging.
Tea?
Decaffeinated tea.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I knew that it wasn't going to be, you know, a luxury stay, and sharing a room. So I was sharing a room with 3 other ladies, and sharing toilets. I mean, luckily, I was lucky enough to have a toilet in our room that we just shared with the girls. But there were, you know, often people were sharing with like boys in the hallway. Like, it's a confronting situation. But, you know, I wasn't there for the luxury stay. I was there to work on myself and to get as much of it out of it as I could.
And so, from the day you entered, because I imagine it's really daunting being around all these strangers and having to open up and feeling really like just scared. It would have been terrifying, I imagine. Did you feel safe and supported, and did you feel secure? Because a lot of your trauma is around not feeling safe or secure. So how long did it take for you to feel secure in the space and around all those people?
Good question. Yeah, well, the day I checked in, I started crying when Damien left me, and I didn't stop pretty much for 2 days. Like, I just felt like my eyes were just pouring constantly.
Were you crying to sort of, because it must be quite surreal thinking, how the hell am I here? What the hell has happened to my life?
Correct. Why am I in a psychiatric hospital / rehab center? Like, what happened? So yeah, there was a lot of that. And so I guess internal judgment. And then fear was a big thing. And I think it was just years of pent up emotions was just coming out. Like, I was just like, I think there was some relief as well. I think that the tears were just like, oh, just yeah.
Because you have talked a lot in the past about being a perfectionist. And I think you do present as perfect. Like, you do. You always look absolutely beautiful, and you look like you always have your shit together. You do. You really do.
I don't.
No, but I think it's like a lot of people, myself included, like there's people pleasing.
Yes.
And just trying to, it is like perfectionist,
100%.
like wanting to do it all and wanting to do it well.
Yeah.
And
for fear of not being loved if you don't do it.
Exactly. And people not wanting to be friends with you, or which sounds so crazy that in your 40s you would even worry about. I mean, I sort of care less about that now, but but I think
these are deep-seated things that are from our childhood. It's actually, we don't even know we're doing them half the time.
Yes.
They're actually what they call coping mechanisms at SPP. And minimizing is one of them, you know, or like if someone gives you a compliment, you know, I know that
I like to vomit it straight back up on the person.
And it's just a way that we, you know, we don't want to ever appear to be, too big for our boots or whatever. Like it's just, they're ingrained behaviors, and they're very hard to, that's how we cope with, difficult emotions.
So it must have been, in a way, quite nice just being like, I'm not fucking perfect.
Yeah. I think it was
like
a little bit of relief.
Letting go of all that emotion and being like, okay, I'm going to let myself lean into this and do the work.
And I think that came a little bit gradually as I got to know my surroundings, but it was daunting. Like when I walked in, the lady was lovely at check-in, but went up to my room, there was a queue to the nurses' station where they hand out the meds. So just like in, you know, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, twice a day, you go line up for your meds. And, you know, obviously people have got their psychiatric medicines and things, but also just supplements. Like if you just want to take a vitamin C, you've got to line up for your meds. So everyone's in line. And it was like school camp or boarding school on steroids. Like there was big personalities, lots of in-jokes, like a lot of hilarity going on. And I sort of walked through with my suitcase, like looking like crying. And and then I had to go and see the doctor. And this woman came up to me, and she looked like really no nonsense woman. She was like probably in her 50s. I found out later that she's a lawyer, and she was just so nice. She said, "Is it your first day?" And I was like, "Yep." She said, "Don't you worry." She said, "Soon you are going to be wrapped up in the biggest bubble of love. You won't even know yourself. You'll be fine." And she was so kind. And she's like, you know, just ask me if you need anything. So she kind of kept checking in with me. And then that night they put me in a room near the nurses' station. So usually for the first night you sort of observed. And so I had my own room for the first night, which was a blessing. And then the next morning was the community meeting with all 60, almost 60, about 55 guests, clients. I don't know what we call them.
Patients.
Patients. And it was just this rollicking, raucous, again, school camp on steroids. Everyone was just, it was hilarious, but it was so supportive. There was such an energy in the room. People were like cheering. And so you would stand up if you were celebrating 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. There was this thing called Dolphin Awards where you got up and you'd give awards to people who had done kind things to you, for you, or were just good friends. And there was so much camaraderie and support and love, and just, I instantly felt like, I mean, even though I wasn't part of it yet, I didn't know everyone. I felt like it's okay. You know, these people are kind. And
it's interesting what you're talking about, because like happiness is derived from connection, and everything that you're talking about is how you connected with these people, how you saw that everyone is innately kind and good and you know, it was very human what you're experiencing.
Yes, the humanity of it.
But really it was like, it was that connection and that validation that we're all going through our own shit.
Yep.
And just that moment to be like, it's going to be okay because
Yeah.
I feel connected to these people and they're here to support me.
Absolutely. And then you go from that into your smaller groups of about 6 or so, and that's your primary group. And they become like your family, and you sharing your innermost, like deepest secrets, the things that you would never tell anyone. And then they reflect it back at you through feedback. So, you know, at the end of your share, everyone gives you some feedback, and it's just so heartening. And, you know, you're in there, as I said, with all walks of life. You know, there was a guy that had just come out of prison, like people that you would never normally encounter. And he had the heart, like just had the heart of gold, like sweetest guy. You know, and some big, scary, tattooed looking guys that, you know, you wouldn't come across in the street. You know, you might not want to come across in the street, but they were so kind. And as you say, the connection thing, just like some moments I remember, like there was one moment when music is a big thing because there's no music, like there's no Spotify or whatever, but a few talented individuals who can play instruments, you always end up, you know, they playing in the meeting room, in the rec room, playing guitar or whatever, and then we'd just be bursting into song, you know. And we were like one day, there was a former adult entertainer and a surgeon sitting side by side at the piano playing a duet, and it was Take Me Home, John Denver. And we were all singing, and it was just so beautiful. I had goosebumps, and it was just like such a wild, random experience. I was like, wow, look at where I am. Look at who's here. But it just shows, as you say, connection and humanity and
your relationships. It's like your happiness is determined by your relationships in life.
Exactly. People are what make everything go round.
And that's ultimately, I guess, what led you to go to the hospital, because you wanted to have the best relationships possible with the people you love.
Exactly.
And you wanted to do the work.
That's right.
Get there.
Yeah. And I think there's, you know, it's about having that self-aware, like what I've learned is that, like, I want to have more self-awareness, and I think doing that kind of work gives you that, you know. And it's, I mean, you can do that kind of work forever, really, and you all can be working on yourself forever. But some of the people that I respect and admire most have done work on themselves over years and have that awareness of self and others, and I think that makes someone beautiful. And yeah.
So 3 weeks, and you were dealing with your trauma, I imagine, every day, and sort of tackling it head on. But then it's back to life and all the pressures of daily life. So how did it feel when you returned home and, you know, the family picked you up, and what were the biggest tools that you took with you?
Wow. It felt amazing to see the kids and Damien and my parents, and I had a real sense of how lucky I am, because a lot of people in there didn't have people to go home to. And they had to come out and start again, you know, and after addictions and all sorts of things, I felt so grateful that I had a family to help me. And again, I mean, a lot of people were in there for trauma that was based on their family of origin, as they call it. And so they couldn't go back to their family. They didn't, you know, they may not have a family. So yeah, felt profoundly lucky. The things I took away, I was really good when I first got out in terms of self-care. I was meditating.
Did you feel like a different person? Like, did you leave that hospital and just feel like you'd had this life-changing experience? Yeah,
I did. And it was like what Dr. Party said. It did change my life. And I think I went in with the thought that I would come out and be fixed for good. Like, I kind of thought 3 weeks intensive, I'll do my therapy, I'll be good, I'll get back and, you know, bang, 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 you know. But I came out and I'm still working on myself, and I probably will be forever. But I did hope that I didn't have to keep going to therapy. But no, I've got a therapist now, and I started working with a somatic therapist as well, which is all about sort of the body and how it holds emotion. So that was really interesting. And this is part of what I'm exploring with the podcast, is it's kind of, I'm looking at different healing modalities and different ways of finding that inner beauty. So, you know, this is why I feel so motivated and excited, because it's what I'm interested in, and I think there's just there's a lot to explore, and there's not a lot of resources out there in terms of what's on offer, and also telling people's stories, asking women and, you know, inspiring people about their journeys and hearing firsthand what's worked for them, you know, the strategies and the tools. So yes, when I first came out, to answer your question, I did feel like a new person, and I was doing all the right things. I was meditating, I was, you know, doing exercise, lots of yoga, and the therapy, and just breathing, like a lot of breathing when I got triggered with
Because
the kids.
I definitely don't breathe properly.
No.
I literally, it's pretty much shallow 99% of the time.
Yeah, chest breathing.
And it's so grounding when
Isn't
you
it?
do stop. But it
Yeah.
again goes back to that, like sitting, stopping, and feeling your emotions.
Yes.
And then
Tuning
breathing.
in. That's right. And it's such a simple thing.
breathe now.
The power of the long exhale. You know, if you double your
Yes.
exhale to your inhale, that's just like instantly calms your, it switches you from sympathetic into parasympathetic, or the other way around. I forget which one's which, but
I think it absolutely is a lifelong journey. I think you don't just recover from trauma in 3 weeks, but you start your journey and to healing relationships, building better relationships, and also I think getting closer to purpose, which I feel like you've got closer to over the last sort of few months, and probably just being a little bit more forgiving of yourself, I imagine.
Absolutely, that's a major part of it. I met my inner child.
What's she like?
she's sweet. I had so much love, and so you do. I did a program in there called Changes, which is you have to get chosen from the greater group to do it, and it's really intense work. And you do chair work, and you do parts work, and sort of you have to you have to talk to your inner child. And it was pretty amazing, and it's a way of having compassion for yourself. And I realized how tough I've been on myself all these years, and so I'm really trying to be kinder to myself and more. And it does make a huge difference with just the way you feel always. And you can find groups outside of so a big thing at SPP and a lot of rehabs obviously is 12-step. So you can do AA or NA, Narcotics Anonymous, or there's also CODA, which is Codependence Anonymous, which I identify as a codependent, which is it's a very complicated laundry list of symptoms, but it's often a result of childhood trauma.
What are some of those symptoms?
Validating yourself from external factors, people pleasing, not having a sense of your emotions, so not knowing what your emotions are. I definitely felt like that, like I never knew what I was feeling. And I was also really affected by others' emotions. Like if Damien was in a bad mood, I couldn't cope. I felt it was all my fault, and I would go into this kind of overdrive of like trying to make him better, and then if that didn't work, then I'd get angry and just stupid stuff. But so that's one thing. Or if the kids weren't right, I wasn't right. So that codependence is not just with one person, it can be with a lot of people. And then there's ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. So if you have had a less than nurturing, is what they call it, less than nurturing upbringing, then that can be considered dysfunctional, believe it or not. And you basically learn to reparent yourself. So there's support groups and 12-step processes for both of those groups, and you go through and basically do the 12 steps, but you apply it to your relationships and the way you parent yourself. It's really interesting stuff. It's good if you like the idea of getting group therapy, but you don't want to actually go into a psychiatric hospital like I did.
And while you were there, you were diagnosed with ADD, and I was recently diagnosed with ADD as well. And I know that we are both on medication, which for me has been absolutely life-changing. And I was so anti-medication. I just wish I had had this diagnosis earlier and got on medication earlier. The way my brain works, I know you feel the same. Everything just makes so much sense now. My whole personality, everything. And I mean, I remember I got the script for my medication, which is Ritalin, and I think it took me about 3 months before I took it because, you know, I barely take Panadol.
Yeah.
And I just did not want to go on medication. I thought it would change my brain. I thought it would change who I am. And I remember I took it and I was at work and I was sort of waiting for this like crazy reaction, and all it did was just calm me right down and make me more focused, and I felt my entire life. So was your ADD diagnosis a surprise, and how has medication impacted you?
It wasn't a huge surprise because I'd been thinking actually that I needed to go and see a psychiatrist to see if there was a possibility that I had it, because I heard your story and I heard some other friends that display similar tendencies to me, and I was like, oh, that does sound like me. But I didn't think I was a candidate again because I was so focused at school, but I think what it was at school, I was hyper-focused.
So hyper-focused, the same as me, because I dreamt for all of school, and then the teachers were like, oh, well, don't bother with her. I was like, well, I'll show them. And then I just became obsessed with studying for the HSC and just went into this hole of studying non-stop.
Yes. I think that was it too. I wanted to prove something. So I guess Dr. Party actually said to me on that first call when I was being assessed for SPP, he's like, have you ever been assessed for ADHD? And I was like, oh, no, funny you should say that. But they didn't actually assess me until after I got out. So that's part of the SPP thing. They don't, I think, diagnose generally until you do your thing and then come out. So when I got out, I had the diagnosis and I went on medication. I tried medication straight away, and I tried a few different types. And then eventually, when I got it, it was just like, it was like the clouds parted. And I was just like, oh, finally I can get stuff done, and I don't have that sense of foreboding. And it calmed my anxiety too, because I think part of the ADHD brain or ADD brain, and I got ADD diagnosis. I think you did too, didn't you? Not ADHD?
I got ADHD.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I'm not very high. I mean, I am a bit hypo, but anyway.
Well, regardless, I think it's very similar. Yes. But there are always so many options that it just calmed my brain down. That, you know, like I wasn't jumping around from thing to thing in my head, and it just took the noise and the chatter away. And so I was able to, it's a game changer. I don't take it every day. I don't take it on weekends generally. I just take it when I have to really focus and do those process-oriented tasks. So actually, I just take it most days for work now.
I'm the same. I won't take it on the weekend. And I took a Ritalin yesterday because I was just had all these things I needed to do, and I just couldn't focus, and I just hit a wall.
You know what it's like when you start thinking like that.
But it was more sort of like housey things. And so last night, because I hadn't used it to do all this work, I just couldn't sleep because I was
that's the downside.
Just buzzing because I don't think my brain had used the medication for what it sort of is meant to be used for.
Yeah. How late in the day did you take it?
12 o'clock, which is fine because it only lasts 4 hours. But for me, it's definitely, it's something that I would take if I'm sitting down at my desk and I've got a full day of work ahead of me, because it just helps block out all the noise. I do one task at a time rather than starting a task and thinking I don't like that task, I'll just jump to something else. And I think there's such a misconception that people with ADHD or ADD can't achieve anything.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, it's only now at 42 that I, you know, how many businesses I've launched and run and random things that I'm always doing. I'm like, enough.
Yeah.
Like, just calm down and do one thing
and do it
and
well.
just on the weekend you can just have the weekend off. You don't have to work, you don't have to do anything. But I think it's that jumping from thing to thing to thing, it's exhausting.
It is so exhausting. And recently I've gone on antidepressants as well for my anxiety, which I've been trying.
Which I remember when you were feeling down, and
you kept
saying. As you know, again, it's my 40s is all about medication. But honestly, I have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoria dysfunction, I think.
Yeah, that's what
but it's basically raging PMS.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, for years you've experienced my PMS firsthand. It's quite unique. But it's a hormonal thing and it's debilitating.
Yeah, it is.
And again, I was like, I'm not taking antidepressants. I don't need medication. I'm not depressed. I'm fine. And it's that huge stigma around antidepressants. And when you actually just say, you know what, who fucking gives a shit?
Yeah.
And you just take it, and it's changed my life. And I remember saying to you, I really think you should go on antidepressants, and you went on them, I think not for very long, and then went off them.
Yes.
And you took a while to actually
come
take
around.
them.
Exactly, because of the stigma. And
So why?
I was worried about the health reasons again. Why did I decide to?
Yeah, why did you decide to? Because it was quite late in the piece. Like, you've been through a lot in terms of depression and anxiety.
It's only been like probably 6 weeks or something. Because I was worried about SSRIs, serotonin. So what is it? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Because I'd heard about some side effects, and I did start taking them, and I thought I was noticing some of those side effects around libido dropping, and I just didn't want that. So then my psychiatrist suggested this new type of antidepressant that's not an SSRI, and I tried it, and he was like, look, you can just go off it if you don't like it, if it's not working for you. And I was like, oh, because I sort of thought, oh no, you've got to wait a certain amount of weeks, and then so I tried it, and within 10 days I noticed just a loosening of the vice around my chest. So it's like I've always felt like this, I couldn't get enough air in almost, and it hasn't taken away my sense of I wasn't depressed, so I haven't been depressed
still
since that period.
Feel the highs and the lows.
Yeah, totally.
And that's the same. I mean, I felt like I went to the doctor and said, I can't breathe, and she did all these tests on me. And she's like, you can breathe.
You had the same thing.
Yeah. I
tightness
can't
in your
breathe.
chest.
And she's like, you can breathe. I've just done all the checks. You can breathe. And I said, I can't breathe. She's like, I've just done all the checks.
You're fine.
You are fine. Go away. You can breathe. And it's anxiety. And unfortunately, she was one of those sort of archaic doctors who doesn't really pay attention to mental health.
Yeah.
But I feel like antidepressants have made such a positive impact on your well-being.
It has, and it's very subtle. And as Dr. Party said, he said it just, for some of the other patients that he had prescribed it to, said it just took the edge off, and that's what it has done. It's taken the edge off. It hasn't taken it away completely. I still can go down catastrophizing thought processes, but I'm better able to recognize them and just go, no, I'm not going there. And as I said, I'm still a work in progress. I've just started with a new therapist that was recommended to me. So, I'll keep working on it, and I'll keep trying all the healing. Like when I went through this period last year before I saw the psychologist, I did hypnotherapy, and that was amazing. I really had some big realizations through that, and that was kind of where I first had the idea for the podcast. So, I think it's a whole lot of different things. I'm going to try kinesiology, because I think a lot of the problem I have is that my trauma is being held in my body. So I'm trying somatic workouts. I need to try and release the trauma, release my feeling of fight or flight that I constantly am in, and do lots of kind of breath work and stuff to try and deregulate myself when I'm feeling uptight, even though I don't know I'm uptight, or I don't know that I'm holding on to stress. And I think a lot of us can be, like you saying that you couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
A lot of us are in a permanent state of fight or flight, and we don't even know it.
And I feel like you just, like, I'll keep going. Like, I'll get my laptop or I'll get my phone.
Yes.
I mean, moving to the country has just been the best thing ever for calming my nervous system down, because I'm just surrounded by nature, which is just like, would you just calm down and like do some weeding or something, or hang out with your chickens?
And you've got all the animals.
It's so grounding, because I have to go and look after these animals. But I mean, you were a few months, I think it was back in November, wasn't it, when you went to hospital? Like, what are your values now? Like, I'm sure they're similar to before you went to hospital, but like, what are your values? Like, what do you want out of life now, I guess, before hospital, and has it changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I didn't even know what my values really were. I knew I had a vague concept of what was right and wrong and what I respected, but I hadn't put my finger on my values. And I definitely have. That's part of the work that we did at SPP. I still got more work to do on it, but I definitely value connection. I value wisdom, and I've always loved beauty and aesthetics and nature. And but definitely kindness, gratitude. And these are all things that I try and put into practice every day. So family, friends, really, it just gave me a real sense of perspective, because I saw some of the stories, the heartbreaking stories of trauma, and I saw how that plays out in people's lives. And as I said before, the humanity of the place was so moving and life affirming. It was an experience that, not many people will get in their lifetime, and I'm really grateful for it. And it did really hammer home the importance of what is actually important, which is, as I said, family, friends, and some of my closest friends now, like one of my good friends is a palliative care nurse, and I just love talking to her because she just puts it into perspective so well.
What an amazing person.
Yeah, and she just, she's amazing. But I just love, being around people that to share their stories and vulnerabilities, and that's what makes us human, and that's what is so exciting about the podcast, because I've found a way to marry my values with my work. And as they say, when you feel like those things are in alignment, you are happy.
And you did toy with the idea of launching a podcast for a while, as we discussed earlier, but I do think that life is all about timing, and it just didn't feel right to you until now. So why now? And I also feel there's a bit of a shift in the Beauty Cake brand with the launch of this podcast, Beautiful Inside. So why are you launching the podcast now? And tell us about the evolution of Beauty Cake.
Well, as you know, the podcast, I had already figured out that I wanted it to be about psychology and beauty, but I couldn't hammer it. I couldn't, because I hadn't gone through my own thing yet, and I hadn't really figured out what was going on within me. I couldn't quite hone it I couldn't bring it to fruition. So the process I went through, it was a necessary process to get it to where I am today. But I did know that I wanted to look at things like longevity and healing and inner beauty. So, internal versus external, but also how the internal is reflected on the outside. And beauty is what I'm an expert in. So it had to stay in the realm of beauty. But to me, it's more about the pursuit of inner beauty and wisdom and grace and healing and self-care. So it has taken all the sort of learnings that I've had over the last 6 to 12 months, and it will be package that up with the experience that I've had in the last 10 years of Beauty Cake. So interviewing people, often in their homes and their spaces, talking about their journeys. So I think that's why it's now, is because I had to go through that process. But it's so exciting. I really feel like I have a chance to try and help people. I think that the things that we discover on the podcast, that I discover when I'm talking to people, will help people. Will learn the strategies and the tools that they have gleaned from all their experience. And that's what it's all about, is sharing information and connection, and I can't wait to get.
And I feel like, you've done it very carefully, and it's been very considered, and you haven't rushed into it. And I think it's like, it's a very thoughtful podcast. I feel like you've put a lot of thought into everything, from the name to the people that you're interviewing to the questions that you want to ask. It has been, very thoughtfully done.
Thank you. Yes, I've thought about it a lot. So I'm glad that
Stop thinking about it and just launch the bloody thing. No,
it's true. It's true. You're right. She always says this to me. There's that bossiness.
No, exactly. No, it's because I'm like impulsive and just do things.
And I admire that about you. I do.
Then it's like a disaster.
I wish I had a dose of you.
Yeah, a little bit. When my brother called me the other day, he said, you're impulsive, spontaneous, and you're acting like a toddler. So, yeah.
I haven't seen you acting like a toddler. That's not true.
I think you have, maybe. But another journey that you have been on, and this is linked very closely to mental health, is alcohol, because you have been experimenting. We've both sort of been experimenting with drinking a lot less over the last couple of years because, I mean, alcohol is linked to anxiety, and I know
Totally.
that you felt the same. Every year I was like, my God, I can't drink anything now without waking up in the middle of the night and feeling anxious. Anxiety. Like, it's so horrible when you wake up at 2 a.m.
Oh.
The anxiety.
And you're not
you
even
just can't
thinking
do
about
it.
the night before necessarily. You're
No.
thinking about the containers that you need to buy for the kids' lunchbox. It's something stupid, and it's just like, oh, it's horrible.
Or you're having anxiety about how you acted the night before, and you might have said something to offend someone, and that also ties into being overly sensitive, which both of us are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think for me, ruling out alcohol, and this is just for me personally, was just not ever going to work, because occasionally, like, I do want a champagne, or I want a cocktail or whatever, or a glass of wine. But I might reach a stage where I don't ever want to drink again.
Yes.
So how are you now approaching drinking?
Yeah, and I've been both ways. I was trying to be sober curious for a while. I took 4 months off a couple of years ago, and it was amazing. It was like the best thing I'd ever done. It was life-changing. But then I decided that I would have a drink now and then very quickly that escalated into almost as much drinking. And I wasn't drinking during the week, but, you know, on the weekend, if I was out with the girls, then I'd just, you know, have a binge, you know, have way more than I should, and then feel horrible the next day. So then when I went to SPP, that's obviously all sober, and I was sober again for 4 months or more, no, probably I think 6 months after that in total.
You did a really long stint. I remember you turned up to my house with like a massive non-alcoholic, and I had such a sugar hangover the next day because I was like just loading up on all these.
I know.
They were delicious.
They are nice, right? Yeah. And then I had a few drinks just recently, you know, some champagne here and there. And so I don't know. I haven't actually put a definite thing on it. Like you, I do like to have a little champagne now and then. I do like a margie, but then I almost always regret it. Almost always. I think it's just going to depend on my headspace and medication and what I'm doing work-wise. And then I probably at some point will get to a point where I don't drink at all anymore. So, yeah, I'm not putting any limits on it at this stage, but definitely way, way less. Like, I'm not drinking at all during the week. Damien and I used to open a bottle of wine most nights. I mean, over COVID, most nights. But yeah, we don't even do that now. So yeah, generally not drinking.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of similar to me. How does it feel? I know that, you know, you have been a little bit hesitant about opening up about this story because it's a big one, and I've been like, no, share it. But it's super personal, and I know you were worried initially about telling people because you didn't want, you know, clients or advertisers to think that, you know, you didn't have your shit together, which is what ultimately we want people to think, oh no, she's fine.
Yes.
But it's like you're being hugely vulnerable and you're opening up about some really personal experiences. Are you nervous about that?
Yeah, and I think I'm more like, intellectually I'm not, because I know it's the right thing to do, but I think my body again is telling me that I'm nervous because I'm waking up at 3 or 4 or 5 and I'm working, and I've been doing this for a few weeks, and I think that's my coping mechanism of making myself busy when I'm uncomfortable. So I think that's definitely what's going on.
Why are you uncomfortable? What are you scared of? Like, people listening to this who have now heard that you went to hospital and you worked through trauma, what's your fear?
I guess I don't want anyone to think that, I guess feeling that they might think that, you know, oh, poor Sigourney, you know, that's not trauma, you know, I've had so much worse. But to that, I would say, yeah, everyone is different, and how they process trauma is different. That's one thing. Again, yeah, the advertisers, I was a bit worried about.
I think as well, there's so much, we all minimize our trauma because we never think, oh, well, compared to, you know, and there is incredible trauma in the world that we will never experience, and we can't even comprehend some of the trauma that there is in the world. But I feel like again and again I hear the women around me minimizing their own trauma, and we shouldn't do that.
No, we shouldn't. You're right. And I would never expect someone else to do that. So why do I do it to myself? Yeah, I remember when you shared that podcast, Mia Friedman was interviewing another woman who'd been to a psychiatric hospital, and at the end Mia said, this sharing your story is really going to help people. And you'd said it too, but having that in my head, saying it will help people, that was the thing that pushed me over the edge. I was like, I owe it to people in this similar situation, whether or not they have childhood trauma, whether or not they have parenting, this sense of parenting anxiety like I had, the chronic health stuff. Like, I know when I post about my reflux or my back and neck pain, my DMs explode. There's so many people going through the same stuff, and there's so much frustration because no one can find a diagnosis. And so I thought, if I can shed some light, shine a light on, my journey through that mind-body connection, that's so fascinating. I'm reading so many books about it. And I think if I can share what I learn, and also just normalize and destigmatize, a lot of these discussions around mental health, then I can do some good and I can help someone somewhere, somehow.
And it's also, I think, just so freeing to sort of be an open book.
Yeah.
This is me. This is what I've been through.
Yep.
I don't really care if you love me or hate me, because all I care about is what my friends and my family think,
right.
which ultimately we shouldn't care what anyone other than the people that we value care
That's
about.
Right. Yeah.
What they think of us. But I think it's incredibly freeing.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And you've written your book, and it's an amazing, beautifully written book.
I was at a dinner party the other night, and my friend was recounting how I lost my virginity to someone else who I'd never met. And I started getting all shy about it and saying, oh my God, so embarrassing, don't. And she's like, you wrote it in a book.
You wrote it in the book. It's in the book.
Don't get all like shy now, because it's all there. So
I know. Well, yeah, I had your words in my head actually about how freeing it would be just to just put it all out there. So yeah, you paved the way beautifully.
Well, I think when I was writing my book, and I called my auntie who's a writer, and I said, oh my God, do I sound totally nuts? And she said, everyone's nuts.
Yeah.
And it's true.
It's true.
Everyone has their own quirks and their
foibles.
own issues that they're working through, and we're all the same. We're all just trying to make sense of it and be the best that we can to the people that we love.
That's right. And we're being the best parents, that's right, that we can be. And maybe the kids will end up on a therapist's couch one day, lamenting the things we did, but we can only do what we can do, right?
So final question. You have done quite a few interviews for your podcast. Is there any advice that you've been given, or a moment from one of the episodes that stands out?
Yeah, look, Pip Edwards was really very fascinating in terms of the healing that she's done from her childhood trauma. And she talks about NLP and her crystals, and she was really great. Trini was like amazing.
Love Trini.
She had so much to say, and she shares so much always on her platform. But there were things that I'd never heard her say before, so I was really, I'm really excited to share that one too. So there's some really good ones coming as well.
Amazing.
Thank you. I'm so grateful
How
that you
fun
took
was
the time.
that?
It was so fun. No, it was really nice to have you interview me. It felt safe.
Well, I do feel like you're in the therapist. The white therapist room.
You know what you can do next in your career if you ever, get tired of
Interiors.
publishing?
No,
psychology.
You got Marie Claire for a while. Hopefully.
Yes, you're doing a fine job at that.
Thank you, darling.
Oh, thank you.
So that concludes our chat about my time in a treatment centre and my whole life basically on the plate for you. I hope you like it. No, I really thought it was important to share what I'd been through, because I really feel like not enough of us know that it's okay to get help. A lot of people don't realize there's help like this out there. I certainly didn't realize that help like this was available. I thought that rehab centers or treatment centers were just for, celebrities and drug and alcohol. I didn't realize that you could get help for things like anxiety and depression in a place like that. And I thought that it was way out of my reach financially. But as it happened, my private health insurance covered my whole stay, which was almost $17,000, I think. So, and you might not decide to go and stay in a treatment center. It may be just as simple as saying, I need help with work. I need help with the kids. I need help with my mental health, finding a counselor, going on a health retreat if that's within your budget, just taking time and saying, I'm not okay. I need to take some time out. And also knowing that, childhood stuff can come back and bite you many years later, like a lot of people have trauma without even realizing it. I certainly didn't know. So getting help, and talking about things and not being afraid to share these stories. That's what's really important. And that's what I'm aiming to do with the podcast. And the mind-body connection and the concept of being a beautiful person inside and out. So how do we do that? How do we cultivate that inner beauty and that inner happiness? So I hope you'll continue to join me on this journey. And as always, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me that you are listening. And if you do like what you hear, please subscribe and rate us. And I will continue to keep making more content like this. See you soon. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Beautiful Inside. If you enjoyed this, the best thing you can do is share it with a friend, leave a review or give us a rating. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. If the content triggers you in any way, please contact Lifeline or Beyond Blue. Contact details in our show notes.